people are becoming less reliant on the US dollar. You have less countries globally purchasing US treasuries, and the US has to buy their own treasuries and print money to buy their own treasuries. So your average person, your average portfolio manager is figuring out that this is real.
Extreme volatility now in the precious metal space on the 29th of January as we're recording. Silver, gold, and copper both spiked up on the day intraday and then gapped down, huge single-digit gap down, actually double-digit in the case of silver, down 11% in the span of 1 hour before a big rebound. What is happening right now with the prices? Is it consolidating? What's going to happen next? We'll find out with the next guest, Peter Dembicki, CEO of Tier 1 Silver. That's ticker TSLV on the TSX Venture Exchange. Welcome to the show, Peter. Good to see you.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me.
The fact that silver is at about $110 an ounce, what does that mean for the entire metals complex? Is this the beginning of the end of the rally, or do you think this signals more momentum to go?
I don't see what's going to stop it at this point, to be honest, unless there's massive government intervention. I think the retail population, I think central banks, everyone's kind of seeing cracks in the systems. On a global macro basis, people are becoming less reliant on the US dollar. It still remains the anchor out there as global currencies, but as the Fed came out with yesterday, Powell says that it's unsustainable, this debt. They have close to $40 trillion in debt. Their interest rates will soon be $1 trillion just in interest to maintain. And if you have less countries globally purchasing US treasuries, then the US has to buy their own treasuries and print money to buy their own treasuries. So it's just the constant story. It's getting bigger and bigger. And I think really just your average person, your average portfolio manager is figuring out that this is real. This is no longer just a theory. It's put into place now, and people are seeing that the precious metals are a safe haven and they are needed to hedge in your portfolio. We've been talking about it for so long, but now it really feels real. And I think it's just the beginning. And of course, being a CEO of a silver company, I have high hopes for silver. And even if we maintain at these levels and create a new base, it's a new reality for both precious metals.
Is there actually a shortage of silver?
There is. And we can account to that from the massive impact that the solar industry has brought. And, it's always closed curtains of what's going on in China, but I don't think we fully understand the scale that they're bringing solar. There's still full steam ahead, even though we have, massive coal plants coming online. Uranium is back into focus and back in favor as kind of a green technology, or however they're labeling it now. But silver is still used in electronics. It's still used in the greenification of this world. But solar was a big driver of that. So it is still in demand. It's still lack of supply. Again, most people look to silver producers to produce the silver, but most know that silver is predominantly a byproduct of these larger copper mines. And with the largest mines in the world getting close to the end of life, and no real massive copper giants coming online with that silver production, we're going to continue to see declines.
The fact of the matter is, Peter, that the silver above ground inventories have been shrinking relative to demand for quite some time now. In other words, the gap in supply and demand has been widening. And it didn't just start last night or a month ago, but this rally sure did. This rally from $25 to $40 at I remember I was at the Beaver Creek Summit in Colorado in late September. It was just touching $40, and then it ran from $40 to $50, and then from $50, it was just a runaway train in the span of 1 month, a month and a half. It went to $80, and then from $80 to, you even said your presentation at VRIC wasn't updated in time to reflect the $100, which happened in literally a few days. So what happened in the last 2 months that finally made the market, I guess, realize the true fundamentals of silver?
It was absolutely parabolic move. It happened so fast, so viciously. And again, I've been preaching this for years. For it to finally happen almost surprises yourself. You're like, oh my goodness, I was telling the truth this whole time. So, what's occurred at the same time geopolitically, you have, our prime minister talking about new world orders, new coalitions in Europe saying, we're going to take our reliance off the US dollar. All of these things are drivers. And we talk to supply and demand, and we talk to just the retail trade as well, driving this thing. So I think so many factors, and You can go down the rabbit hole on silver for weeks and weeks, and at the end of the day, I don't think you're 100% certain of why or who the actors are behind it, because there's so many theories around the derivatives market around this. How many paper ounce derivative contracts are there for every ounce above ground? Some say 1,000, some say 200 or 350. But when that trade is caught offside, it can add to a squeeze, add retail buying long, take your major bullion banks and remove the short to a long position. All of these things can add to that kind of wicked move that we've seen.
How far can this squeeze go before the price reaches a level that would really incentivize the miners to pick up production one way or another, dramatically expand production, if that's even, I guess, geologically or physically possible to do?
Yeah, I don't know how you flick a switch and say we need to produce more silver. These things have been producing at full scale for a long time. We are going to see more projects coming online, more people trying to push projects forward to get into production. But again, there's not that many pure play silver producers. As I mentioned, the big producers of copper and silver as a byproduct they're in their last years of production. This is why copper is extremely important in the silver picture as to the silver being produced globally.
Okay. How about on the just wealth management side? So prior to being at Tier 1 Silver, you've had tremendous experience working on the wealth management and corporate finance sides. So let's suppose you were still in that industry and a client, high net worth individual or institutional investor were to approach you, Peter, and say, hey, look, the fact that the metals have gone up this much, how do we approach portfolio asset allocation now that we have $5,300 gold and $110 silver? Our prior allocations to gold and silver have ballooned to such an extent that if we had a certain weighting in mind, we have to take profits. So should we take profits or keep the higher allocation today?
I think people are seeing more and more that the precious metals belongs in your portfolio as a hedge. You can't think of it as a junior venture company trying to make a lot of dollars in a quick amount of time. So again, it all depends on your risk component of the client and making sure that they understand the risks of commodities. But to have that kind of 10 to 15% allocation in your portfolio now of precious metals, if you believe that the future will see, a hedge against the dollar, which I believe has really started to move in a downward position. Again, we measure that in the DXY, the Dixie. It's not exactly measured against the most valuable currencies globally either. Every currency in the world seems to have its problems being fiat currency with no physical backing of any dollar component. So, it's if they strongly believe that and they understand the risks and the long-term focus of this, of dollarization going down, the devaluation, then I think it belongs in everyone's portfolio.
Do you think gold and silver have shifted into, like what you said, hedges for safety to more risk-on leverage plays? Like if someone were to approach you in 2026 and say, hey, what is the role of gold and silver in my portfolio? Would you say this is a leverage play on the NASDAQ? Because that's how it's behaving.
It sure does. It feels like, it's hard to say that they're going to have these same kind of moves that we've seen in the recent weeks to really add that win, so to speak, in your portfolio. But it sure belongs there as insurance. And I think that's how you have to look at it. Now you can go to the individual names to really get that leverage and the kind of returns that you need to meet your needs.
Well, that goes to my next question, is why we need miners today, and what is the role that miners play in our portfolios if we have silver going up literally 300% in the past year and gold up triple digits as well in terms of percentage gains. Some say, well, that's enough for me, and the bullion's doing great. So what additional benefit do I have by investing in the miners, either explorers, developers, or seniors alike?
Yeah, well, for the needs of the major mines, they need exploration companies to go out there and let's call it, do their dirty work for them. They need exploration companies to go out there, take that risk with the exploration, to bring new projects online. That's why you always want your project to be in an area that majors are familiar with. They know. They would be amenable for them to enter into that area and set up shop. And so I think with the juniors doing the work for the majors, they're looking for us to make that next discovery so they can move in with the serious money and the serious commitment on that 10-year commitment to get a major mine up to scale. So yeah, it's crucially important, especially with the shortage of an industrial use metal like silver and like copper. Now, gold is slightly different because there's no actual use cases for it. It is a pure hedge against, currencies. But silver is that perfect commodity because it shares so many characteristics that it does with gold, but yet has that use case like it does for copper. And it's still widely used and it still remains the best electrical conductor, and it's still prevalent in all of our electronics.
What do you think is going to happen to tech companies that use a lot of silver and copper in their electronics? I'm talking about EVs or just battery manufacturers. Even in our phones and electronics and semiconductors, there's still small amounts of silver. In 2011, articles were popping up left, right, and center in mainstream media about how tech and semiconductor companies were thrifting silver and gold, especially gold, when it was then at its all-time high. And I just wonder how the industry is going to react to $100 silver, Peter.
Yeah, and you start seeing tech companies or EV car manufacturers, battery manufacturers going downstream and actually taking stakes in mining companies. They need that source. They need that source of product. It's a truly interesting time when you have massive tech companies that have been the dominant leaders, the dominant driving force in our broad markets for years. They're getting bigger and bigger, and they're seeing the needs of energy and electrification, these data centers. So I think you're going to start seeing that a lot more. They're going to be coming, straight to market to secure their product. It's a really interesting time.
I want to show you this chart from today, the 29th of January. This is an interesting development. Just comment on why you think this may have happened. So at exactly 10 a.m. or around 10 a.m. Eastern time, silver went down 11%. It wasn't just silver, it was gold, right? Same time, down 8%. That's a massive intraday move for gold, especially. That's almost unheard of.
Incredible.
Copper as well. I mean, if it was just one metal, okay, we can kind of reference it to metal-specific news, but it seems like a coordinated dump. And I posted this on my X. I said, what happened at 10 a.m.? All sorts of theories. That's called manipulation. It's an organized slam. Sorry, I need some cash. No, but Peter Schiff sold. Have you seen things like this happen, at least on this type of magnitude and with this level of coordination, Peter? What kinds of theories can you ascribe this to?
Well, yeah, the size of that crash, and I was watching it in real time, going, "Oh my goodness," because we were kind of getting used to in the last few weeks of these 5-6% days up over and over and over. So there has to be a breather at some point. Now, who's taking that breath? Is it the bullion banks that need to hedge their position and put a massive short on it and slam? And you and I were talking previously about our best friend, Mr. Slammy, for years on, especially in the silver market. Investors would wake up and 45 minutes prior to the general markets opening, there could be a complete takedown of the price of silver, and it's deflating, it's demoralizing. But silver would either stay in the red for the remainder of the day or crawl its way back to make gains. But it just seems so systematic for so long, which makes you think, have these shorts turned into longs, and what has allowed it to truly take off the way it has. But this morning was unique. It wasn't surprising though, and the fact that the resiliency of all the metals to come crawling back, and I see no reason for them to not continue that movement higher going along. But there's going to be profit taking along the way. You have to think that hedge funds, mutual funds, general investors, retail investors, central banks, everyone might take profits here and there. But it was a pretty wicked move.
I like to ask the same question to you that I did with several other silver companies at the VRIC last weekend, which is, if you were to do a PEA or even a pre-feasibility study today, what silver price assumption would you use for the net asset value?
Oh, great question. Because I think so many companies have been using, much lower targets, $30, $25, $30 silver. So it's too hard to peg that right now. Things are just moving too fast. But again, our company isn't at that stage just yet. So my focus is purely on discovery and making that next world-class project and let the developers and the majors make those assumptions when they put that out.
If someone were to tell me $35 or even $50, and in fact, taking it one step further, if silver were to fall back towards $50 an ounce, it wouldn't change any other strategies whatsoever. What kind of signal does that give you?
Yeah, I mean, we all know that cutoff for silver producers was always around that $23 to $25 mark. Anytime it fell below $23 in the market, silver gets pretty quiet. It gets to be a pretty lonely space all of a sudden, and you start looking at yourself in the mirror. But when it comes above and starts getting profitable, it's a really volatile place to be. So if we create a new base back at 50, amazing. I don't think it goes back there at any time soon. I think we're going to be creating a much solid base, a lot higher than that going forward. So it just shows how volatile it is, and I think we need more time at these higher levels to really peg a level to do your PEAs or pre-fees.
And how has this rally affected Tier 1 silver in the last month?
It's not just the last month. For us, we've been through quite a few years. We came out of the gates in 2021 on fire. In a good way. And silver was just hitting $30 an ounce. I think it tickled it just for days at a time. But at that time, that was a place that silver hadn't been for a long time. And so companies were crawling over each other trying to find a silver project. You saw companies changing their name from ABC Gold to ABC Gold and Silver just to ride that wave, because it is so euphoric and dramatic, and there could be a lot of money made and a lot of capital raised. And so when we came to market, we had some very exciting, rock samples, grab samples, channel samples, but we hadn't even started drilling yet. And our company went to a $250 million market cap, $1.90 a share Canadian. And again, we hadn't even brought out the drill yet. That just showed the craziness that surrounds the silver market. So here we are at $115 silver. But again, we only got one drill program in back in 2021, 2022. We haven't drilled since. We're just about to start. So you put 3.5 years together, 4 years together of no drilling, which means no news, in a really terrible mining market. Nothing drifts up. So, our share price is where it is. Our market cap is where it is, but we're out of hibernation now. We're ready to attack it, and we're going to start drilling shortly. So a really exciting time. And I could say, like we discussed earlier, September, October was huge for the company. It brought a lot of attention back, and people are again looking for silver names. They're looking for who's going after high grade silver and in good countries to explore. And of course, Tier 1 is on top of that list. So it was a really big time for us.
If an investor were to say to you, well, Tier 1's operating in Peru, so you can tell us about the jurisdiction of Peru. But if an investor were to say to you, well, we really want to prioritize going into North American assets because Trump has made such a big deal in making all these metals critical, like copper, for example, and expressing the concern that these critical minerals mined outside of the Americas present a national security risk to the defense sector of America, as well as the national core interests in energy and other industries. And so how would you respond to the fact that maybe some investors want to prioritize looking into U.S.-based companies? Is that even happening right now?
I think it's topical right now. Whether that's a long-term focus for any company remains to be seen, because, administrations change, focuses change. Peru's been a stable mining jurisdiction for quite some time. And, we can go down the rabbit hole on geopolitical confrontations globally. China is very, very heavily invested in South America and Africa, helping with infrastructure. Currently, there's a deep water port being constructed in Peru for easy access to minerals. And this is something that caught the U.S. government by surprise, astonishingly. So the U.S. government is involved also internationally. They're not just about closing the borders and keeping minerals all to themselves. They're very active globally. And David, this is why we have wars. It's about securing mineral rights. I know there's the chance of liberating countries and spreading freedom across the world, but what we saw in Venezuela, and kudos to Trump for being upfront about it, we wanted their oil. Period. They had a leader in there, Maduro, that was not treating the citizens well for some time. So there's a reason to go in, but he was straight up with it. He goes, "We wanted their oil. We wanted access to the crude." There's only a few places on earth that produce that type of oil in that type of quantity, and they're securing it. So they're not afraid to go to other parts outside of the U.S. to secure these things.
And Peter, the fact that the capture of Maduro happened in the last month, how has that impacted operations for the rest of South America? Has it impacted you? For example, have you changed strategy to prepare for possibly the same thing happening with Peru?
Not at all. Not at all. Peru has been a friend to the United States, to North American countries for some time. Not to say that they don't go through political change. I think I'm on my 8th Peruvian president since I've been CEO of Tier 1. But it's the same thing, rinse and repeat over and over and over again. You get a president that rallies the rural populations in Peru. Your vote is basically split down the middle by the Lima population, which is more of a capitalist nature, right-wing leaning pro-business. And then you have your rural areas in Peru that feel that they need a little bit more from the government and a little bit more support. So you get candidates that rally the vote. They get into power. They realize that Congress is deadlocked. The military is not coming anywhere close to this. They can't rewrite the Constitution. People get upset. They put up blockades. They rally. They get the president thrown out or impeached, and then a new president comes in. So tough for the people of Peru, obviously, but for operations on the ground, nothing changes. Nothing changes, which is why the country is packed full of the major mining companies in the world, why investors like it, why it's a great place to operate. And again, as an exploration company, we don't really have to keep a strong pulse on a lot of these things. We're not employing 5,000 people. We're not major revenue producers. We keep a small footprint. So it really comes down to your local small pocket of social influence in your community. But for the most part, we fly under the radar. The biggest headwind we might find with the regime change in Peru is a shuffle of the cabinet ministers. So if you're in the middle of permitting, there might be slight delays or get answers back, but we've had zero delays as a result of any kind of political instability in Peru. And so I've learned a lot, because it affected me early on since I've been CEO of Tier 1, but now it's not even an afterthought.
Well, give us a rundown of your project, the size, deposit, any byproduct that you have in your deposits. Let's start there.
Sure. Well, Tier 1 Silver is exploration. We were once a spin out of a company called Orin Resources. Orin was a TSX listed, New York Stock Exchange listed company, had a huge swath of land in Canada. All that got spun out into a company called Fury Gold. Then there were two assets in Peru that they split the company into two. One being Tier 1 Silver that focused on the precious metals, and my chairman, Ivan Bebic, who's CEO of the third company called Copernico Metals, who your listeners have heard him speak on an interview with you previously. So he's currently chairman of Tier 1 Silver. So we really wanted to focus and go find the number one precious metals target in Peru. Now, 5.5 years ago, we sent our technical team and said, go and find us. We're like, tell us where to go, but stick to the coastline in Peru, because along the coast, it's much more amenable to mining. They're much more familiar with it. It's much easier to get permits. The closer you get to the Bolivian border in Peru, things tend to get a little bit sticky socially, a little bit tougher to operate. The terrain becomes tougher. The elevation gets very, very high in the Andes. So let's set ourselves up for success and stick to the coast and see what we can find. And ironically enough, our flagship project, Kurbaya, came back as the number one target, but it didn't land us on this, prolific epithermal belt that people assumed it might, but right in the heart of copper country. So it put us smack dab right next to some of the largest producers in the world of Cerro Verde, Tocopala, Quellaveco, Cojone. And also we're right above the border of Chile in southern Peru. These giants start up again in northern Chile. So there's a geological occurrence that produced all of these massive world-leading miners, but we had this precious metals target to go after, and the results that started to come out immediately were truly phenomenal.
How does the exploration process change when silver is at $20 versus $100?
I think honestly, nothing changes operationally. When you're exploring, the biggest change for us comes attention and the ability to capitalize the company, to finance the company. Makes it a lot easier, because the reason we didn't explore over the last few years was literally that it was really hard to finance an early exploration silver company at this stake. We're pre-resource. We're not mining anything. So the risk was off, as we saw when in late 2022, when interest rates got jacked up, the broad markets were limit down. The risk was off the table, and exploration companies are a part of that allocation. And so we kind of get thrown out for a while and put to the side. But when capital is there, the backdrop is there, the wind is at your back, you're able to finance your company, now we can bring out the drill and get really aggressive. So it really comes down to perception, risk, and the ability to finance, which allows us to be more aggressive on the drill bit.
And in terms of raising capital, have you moved the timeline now for financing, now that we have this environment?
Yeah, I mean, we captured that first move in silver in September. We were able to raise $6.5 million, which was great, because that gave us enough to run a program down in Peru at Kurbaya that would be meaningful, and to really get some great answers out of our project. So yeah, we were able to capitalize that. And of course, with silver going from then, 40, 50, all the way up to where we're seeing above $110 an ounce right now. There's a lot of people, my phone is finally taking incoming calls. And for years, I thought, my phone wasn't working at all. So the attention is back. People love silver, but it moves fast. We can go from $110 hitting new highs at 110, and my phone's ringing off the hook. It drops down to 108 and it gets kind of quiet. Silver is very fickle like that. There's a lot of emotion tied to it, a lot of momentum. So a move like we saw this morning in the market with that fast takedown, it went from, hey, do you guys need money, to, okay, pause on that for a second. Let's just see where this ends up. And I'm used to it now. It used to drive me crazy, but it just moves fast, and you got to be ready to capture it.
Well, what are your investors kind of pushing you to do right now in this environment? What are the priorities that they want you to focus on?
My investors have been extremely patient with us, and they've been pushing us since we took the drill out of the ground in late 2021 to get back and drill. And we finally are able to do that, because without that, we're just stagnant. We have an incredible project. Everyone just wants to see us drilling, because we're drilling under plus kilo silver, which is just unheard of to find these types of assets in the world. And we have a project that's 100% owned, that we've been able to do a lot of work on, a lot of geophysics, a lot of channel sampling, trenching, a lot of targets to go after. So we finally get to bring out the drill and get drilling. All
right. And in terms of operational risks in Peru, if someone were to say, look, it's geographically, South America is rich in deposits, but jurisdictionally not as safe as Canada or the US, how would you respond to that?
Oh, I've been waiting for that question for some time now, because I've had to do all the conference rounds, road shows, everything, you name it, and South America always comes up, and they always compare it to quote unquote safe jurisdictions. Well, my goodness, what have we seen in Canada over the last year? There's been a complete change with, the government's relations to First Nations and property rights. We've seen that affect some northwestern British Columbia projects up in the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. I think this is going to happen more and more to Canadian assets. And, I'm not going to, make that stand on whether I think it's right or it's wrong or get political about it. But it sure adds a little bit of risk, doesn't it? To know if one day your mine could be yours and the next day it could be handed off completely belonging to rights to somebody else. So for the first time, you look at countries that really don't have that risk. And South America kind of plodding along. You get investor perception, newspapers, that we've seen newspaper headlines with stuff like Venezuela. So you kind of get painted with that same brush. But that's why we love Peru, because it is so mineral rich. People are tentative about setting up operations in South America because they don't want to take that on. But we've been there. We've been there as a group for 8-9 years. So we're comfortable. We have great people on the ground managing our business, liaising with the communities and the social and the government. So we're very comfortable operating down there, and we love it. We love having that extra torque to the name being in South America. And really, it's a new paradigm out there, and there's risk everywhere. But I think it comes down to pockets, areas. There are countries out there that, you would never operate in, but in that certain pocket, it's quite safe and easy to operate. But, we've seen some pretty scary stuff out there in Central America. Vizsla Silver's, a phenomenal project, great team, really respect everything about their project, but they obviously have some stuff with Mexico that they need to work on, and it can get scary at times.
Peter, final question. I would imagine that at current silver prices, there's going to be, assuming it's sustainable for the next couple of weeks to months, there's going to be a lot of new silver explorers just popping out of nowhere. These things typically happen when cycles start getting really hot.
Absolutely.
What separates you from the newcomers?
One, we've already had a great and successful drill program, like knocked it out of the park. We did a reconnaissance drill program of just 5,000 meters of drilling. These drill holes were spaced out by 500 meter gaps. And the fact that we come back with, 35% of our drill holes in a reconnaissance program hitting plus kilo silver, economic grades, you just don't find. You don't find these grades that often. And, as a refresher for your listeners that know the Tier 1 story, or for people that aren't familiar with the story, when we first went to this property, in a natural progression of geology and exploration, it's a raw piece of land that was never before drilled, never before explored. And we got silver grades and gold grades, silver grades of up to 300,000 grams per ton silver, gold grades reaching almost a kilo of gold, dozens of plus kilo silver samples and 2.5 grams gold. So this little area that we have found, not too small, 17,000 hectares of land spread over like a 6x5 kilometer kind of footprint, is just pouring out with high grade silver and gold. So to have that first pass being tremendously successful with the potential of a copper discovery near the property, I love comparing my company to other silver companies, because when I look at the grades, I always have to double check. I'm not a geologist, but I go to my technical team. I go, wow, that company is doing really well. They're doing well in the market. People seem to be attracted to it for its silver, but our grades are incredible compared to it. And my geologist, Christian Rios, who's been a part of some massive silver discoveries in the world, formerly of Bear Creek, says, man, like, we have a real player on our hands here at our flagship project, Curabaya, and it's just an incredible asset. So we're going to see a lot more silver explorers, and I love seeing them come, because I love comparing myself to them at the same time.
Okay, excellent. Tell us finally, before we finish off the discussion, tell us a little bit about your professional background. I mentioned in the beginning you have experience with wealth management and corporate finance prior to Tier 1 Silver. Tell us about your professional journey and how you ended up at the C-suite of Tier 1 Silver.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey for myself. I mean, prior to being at Canaccord Genuity on the banking side and retail side for 10 years, I was on the Canadian national rowing team. So I know a thing or two about work ethic and repetitive habits to accomplish a goal. And then found myself on the retail side of being a broker, where I saw all sorts of different sectors at different times have peaks and troughs, and financing early stage companies and how to get them listed, and hand holding CEOs on what to do next once they're a public company. So it was a real natural fit when I made the jump to come to Tier 1. And a lot of that was a bet on people and personnel. Ivan, my chairman, and his team have knocked it out of the park a couple times in their past, and to have one geological discovery to put a check mark next to is something that people hang their hat on. To be a public company and to be able to wrap that up and exit for shareholders once in your career is huge. To be able to do that back to back is unheard of. And so that gave me a lot of confidence that I was stepping into a great group with great technical prowess, capital markets background, and great leadership and support from my board. So it was a natural fit. And again, a lot of times when you have a geologist as CEO, we got to make sure that the audience is paying attention and staying awake. So, as a broker, I was a specialist in 70 different names at one time to service all my clients. But for me to grab onto one story and get passionate about it and live it and, feel the rock, so to speak, it was an easy fit for me, and I've enjoyed it every step of the way.
Tell us about your milestones that you plan to reach in the next 6 months, and the near-term catalysts, I would say, for more shareholder value added.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, David, it's been a while since we've drilled. So having that financing completed in the fall allows us to go and bring out the drill again. So within the next 2 weeks, the drills will be turning on site. And I can barely sleep at night because, Tier 1 is such a undervalued company in the market for what we have. We're about to go drilling under plus kilo silver channel samples and trenches in an area that many consultants and professionals have pointed us towards on our property. This is an area that is higher in elevation. It's less erosion. In our first program, we came to the conclusion that we were drilling at the bottom of this precious metal system. We were hitting very shallow, but we weren't hitting at depth. So if we went north on our property, there would be an area which is called the Kembaya corridor that has 500 meters more in elevation, but a lot less erosion. So this is where we're going to get our meteor intercepts. And so we went up there, channel sampling, trench rock sampling, finding 8 kilos of silver, 4 grams gold, multi-kilo channel samples over 1, 2, 3, sometimes 7 meters. So this is where we get to drill directly under in this next drill program. So we have so many targets to go after. We're going to be as aggressive as we possibly can to get these results back to shareholders. But it's a really exciting time for anybody looking for that pure silver explorer in their portfolio. It's a great opportunity before the drilling begins to take a look.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll put the link to Tier 1 Silver's website down below. And please do your due diligence and learn more about the company down there. Thank you very much, Peter. I appreciate your time. We'll speak again soon. Take care for now. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.